Well, hello there. Welcome to part 3 of chapter 6. I must tell you that the first 2 parts of this lecture, I was a bit tired, if you couldn't tell, so my energy level was a little bit low and they were kind of crappy. So I'm going to try and bring it up a little bit right now because it's the afternoon and I've drank lots of coffee and I'm feeling a little bit better, you know. Hey, alright then. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch from the Irish into the Scottish, and you know how you do it? You just make the Irish rolls off your tongue a little bit, and to make a Scottish accent, what you've got to do is sound angry, like, I'm Scottish! Aye! Are you ready? Alright, that's Scottish. Alright, now I'm going to go back into my normal, mundane, horrible voice. Right now we're going to look at how does a population's age structure affect its growth or its decline. Let's do it, shall we? Oh, why wasn't it going then? There we go. Okay, so what is age structure? So for this we're looking at this as a distribution of males and females among age groups in a population. And the first graph we're going to look at just separates them into males and females. And then the second ones we're going to look at separate them into these 3 stages: pre-reproductive, reproductive, and post-reproductive. Because knowing what portion of a population is in each one of these categories can tell us a lot of information about future growth of that country's population, maybe some economic situations that they might run into. There's a lot of information there. It's good stuff. Stay tuned, let's keep going. Alright, so this is your basic population pyramid. The men are on the left-hand side, the blue, and the girls are on the right-hand side, the quasi-purple, I'm not really sure. And, dang it, I keep saying all the time. Don't count them as you're watching these videos, I'm sorry. So let's look here. These are broken up into what we call cohorts. C-O-H-O-R-T, cohorts. Another name of saying group. Here's the 0 to 4 age bracket, 5 to 9. And these are 5-year brackets, all right? Age 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Age 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so 5-year brackets, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, so on and so forth, okay? And you just put that information on there. Usually, what they'll do is, there's a couple ways that they can do this. They can put this bracket, 0 to 4. Now here it starts at 0 and the numbers are the same for the males as for the females going out. So they might list it as an absolute number, right? Like this isn't listed, it's hard for you to see these numbers, but it could be like every mark could be 1 million people in that population. Okay? So then you'd be able to go over, it's 4 tick marks, which is for 4 million. So the males in this cohort are 4 million. There's 4 million men in this country age 0 to 4. Or what you'll see more often is the bottom scale listed as percent. Okay, so it'll be 5%, 10%, 15%, and then you can say, okay, so the cohort of 0 to 4 male represents 15% of the population in this country, and the girls represent in the cohort 0 to 4 represent 10% of the population. You know, so again, either an absolute number at the bottom or percentage of the population. So let's look at an actual representation of this pyramid. If you look here and you see a lot of these companies right here are what we would call developing countries that have this type of steep pyramid. And they're called a pre-reproductive period because the majority of their population is in the 0 to 14 bracket. So it's these first 3 cohorts: 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14. Okay? So those are all people in their pre-reproductive years. So eventually, the majority of their population, which is in this stage, is going to reproduce. When that happens, their population is going to explode, right? So these people in this very steep pyramid are set up to have a huge population in the future. So again, these are usually our developing countries. So again, Guatemala, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia are examples. Here's Nigeria's actual, from 2010, their population pyramid. And here you can see it's represented by, this is percentages. And you can look any of these up on your own if you'd like to, like you're really going to do that. But if you get, Saturday night, you've got nothing to do, look up population pyramids for random countries across the world. That would be awesome. Okay, so now let's look at this expanding slowly. Now, a couple things I want to say about this. Well, the majority of these countries' populations are in this middle. They're in their reproductive ages. So they're reproducing now, right now. And they have slow growth, but they're still growing. And eventually, you can see that it's starting to get level. And eventually their population might even out, and they'll reach zero population growth. These are developed countries, essentially, who are here. United States, Australia, China is considered a developing still, because remember, they've got 1.4 billion people, and the majority of them live in rural areas where they've got nothing. It's a very small percentage lives in the cities with lots of money. But because of their one-child policy, that throws them into this group. So it's an artificial throwing into this group, if you will. Now, the United States will also be probably moving out of this very shortly, because if you remember back to, well, that was loud. If you remember back to last lecture, the one prior to this, we discussed how the total fertility rate for the United States is now, has moved from 2.1 in 2008 down to 1.9 in 2013. So we are now under our replacement level fertility, which is 2.1 in a developed country. So the sides of ours should start being vertical walls almost. So we're probably moving out of this one, and we'll move out in the near future. Okay. So this tells us that we won't have a rapidly expanding population in the future, but we also want to make sure that we keep enough people down here at the bottom of the pyramid to support the people who are at the top of the pyramid. More on that in just a little bit. Okay. Oops, sorry, go back. So this one is called a stable population. Okay, so you can see the walls here are almost vertical. All right, so they basically reached replacement level fertility. So we're not expecting their population to grow very much in the near future. So we've got Italy and Greece here as examples. Now, again, the problem here is you just want to make sure that as you approach that zero population growth, that there are sufficient quantities of people here working still to support those who are on top, who are going to be retiring soon and going into those pension plans. Because what you don't want to happen from an economic standpoint is this. Okay, so if you look at Germany, Bulgaria, Russia, I think Germany on our PowerPoint slide the last one had a total fertility rate of 1.4, I think it was, meaning they've got a declining population. This is what that pyramid would look like, an inverted pyramid, if you will. Now, they've got a huge retiring population, and there's not a lot of people below it. So that's why they are incentivizing people to have more children, because they need more people to enter the population and eventually become workers to support all those people on top. So they want this to expand back out a little bit. So it's nice to have vertical walls, right? That's a good place to be. Maintain your population, right? Maybe growing ever so slightly, because capitalism always needs to grow, right? So if it's expanding ever so slightly, from an economic standpoint, that's good. From a populating the world, maybe you want to be just vertical walls, because that means zero population growth. And a declining population, I mean, let's be honest, we can afford to have less people in the future. I'm not saying we should go around killing people, but if enough people choose to have smaller families, that would be good for the Earth's health, if you will. But based on capitalism, that's bad, because capitalism always needs to get bigger for it to work. The moment it starts to come in like this, if this was a graph of the capitalistic market, the economy, when that starts to happen, that's when a recession happens. And if you learned anything from this recession that we're finally clawing our way out of, it sucks. It's hard on families. So nobody wants to be there from an economic standpoint. So that is something to take away from this whole class in general. The two things that are always opposing each other are the health of the environment and the economy. So how can we fuse them together? Yeah, I don't know. That's not for me to answer, but it's something to think about. Okay, so changing shape of Japan's population pyramid. Japan is having an awful time right now. They've got a small young population and a huge elderly population. They are struggling to get people to have more children because they need these people here. Okay, so they're also trying to change the immigration policy to have more foreigners come in too. But that's also hard too because they want to keep their Japanese culture intact. So there's this back and forth over how much immigration they should allow and what they can do to incentivize people to have more kids. But you can see they made great gains in the beginning, right? They had an exploding population, and they're a small island, so they needed to limit, right? So they really tried to educate their women, which had then the opportunity cost of children, convinced women to have less children. It's a better way of saying it. So they started to move towards a stable growth, and then it continued, and now they're actually in a declining population, and that is very difficult for their economy. They've been in a horrid recession for the last 20 years and are trying to come out of it. So what can age structure diagrams tell us? That populations with lots of young people can grow rapidly. Populations with old people can decline rapidly. Surprise, surprise. And we can use these to make projections about their population and their future economic gains or losses. Hopefully that was a little more lively than the prior two. Thank you for flying Pooler Air. Come back again, you see me sometime, okay?